Om Jananim Saradam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Pada Padme Tayo Shritva Pranamami Muhur. So we begin today that particular conversation which took place between Swami Shantanandji, who was a very dear disciple of Holy Mother. He led an exemplary life, and later on, when he lived as a retired monk in Belur Mutt, a large number of people used to come to him. I heard a story from one very senior monk of our order who had the opportunity to serve him. You see, in those days, there were a lot of young people from foreign countries who somehow got attracted to religion. They were not very keen to follow the monastic life, but they had some kind of curiosity to get some peace. That was the time when perhaps the movement, the hippie movement, as it is popularly known especially in United States, when a large number of young people used to get attracted and they were searching for some meaning in life. The problem with the uh, people who don't have a goal in life is that they get immersed in some kind of meaninglessness. According to Jean-Paul Sartre, who is a French philosopher, who believed that this kind of meaninglessness or some kind of loneliness which people feel is a result of an existential problem. The fundamental problems which we discussed yesterday in our Rajoga class, where Patanjali says that there are 5 different kleshas which are obstructions, which act as obstructions. They are not sorrow by themselves. We had an elaborate discussion in our Rajoga class yesterday that kleshas are something which lead to sorrow. They are certain obstructions to certain thoughts or certain activities of the human mind, and those obstructions, painful obstructions, klesha literally means painful obstructions or blocks in our mind. So Patanjali says all our problems, whatever it may be, when you feel sorrow, the sorrow has a root in something, and that root is the kleshas. So he defined 5 different kleshas. We will not go into a discussion of all those things. But in this context, this young gentleman, the 5 out of 5 kleshas, one of them which leads to existential problem is the fear of death, or you may say clinging to life. Now, how can clinging to life be a problem? It's a natural phenomena which we see in animals. You try to crush a worm or take any insect. The moment you try to kill it, it struggles to live. It will try to escape. So also the whole animal kingdom, you will find that everybody is clinging to life. What is so special about it? It's not the clinging to life that is important, but its associated problems. When a man, what happens? That fear, it is also known as fear of death. And that is why this young Nachiketa went to Yama to know what happens, because that anxiety, that worry, which is always like an undercurrent troubling all of us, even the best of people. It's not that it afflicts ordinary people, it afflicts even the saints, it afflicts everybody. Unless they have reached the state of immortality where you don't fear death at all. So unless you realize that, this fear will linger in some form or the other. But only when in ordinary people with a distracted mind, this particular abhinivesha or clinging to life, or you can also say fear of death, that manifests itself in different forms. in different existential problems. The obstacles that lead, that abhinivesha, that lead to these existential fears or existential anxieties. What will happen to me? What is the goal of life? What is the meaning of life? These are questions asked by practically every human being, whether he has a goal or not. He may think he has a goal in life, but everybody feels that there has to be a meaning. What is the meaning behind all the things that I'm doing? Am I doing it just because everybody else is doing? Everybody else takes a job. Everybody else may be doing some business. So I do business. If that is the motive, then it will not last long. There has to be an ultimate goal or ultimate motive. Why people, if that is not solved, it gives rise to existential problems, which, according to the very problem of existence, is a klesha. It's a painful obstruction which impedes our progress. It removes all the joy, or it gives rise to sorrow, or at least it spoils the joy that we should naturally feel. If our nature, our real nature is Brahman, which is also known as Satchidananda. If Vedanta claims that if our real nature, then why don't we feel it? We feel our existence. We also are conscious. We know what Chit is to some extent, but where is that Ananda? Why the basic nature of a human being is known as blissful? If it was all bliss, then why do I feel pain in life? What causes sorrow? This is a basic question which every spiritual person asks. Even Buddha asked this question, and he was seeking an answer to that, and finally gets nirvana. So also all people do ask this question. If it is not answered satisfactorily, then it leads to existential problems. That is a word which was coined recently, I mean, a century ago, by this scientist. But those existential problems were known to Patanjali long before, because his was a quest to find out the root of sorrow. Where does sorrow come from? Why does this meaninglessness come in life? I have everything practically. Suppose I have enough money to live, enough a good job or whatever it is, lot of security. As far as leading a simple life is concerned, there is no anxiety as for if it is survival is the only goal in life. Some people they may have poverty, they may lose their jobs, and then they may struggle even to exist. I'm not talking of those people, but I'm talking of people who have a assured job, or maybe some kind of security in life, financial security, um, health security, and many other securities people are seeking. But does it stop with that? Does his quest stop with that? If it had stopped, then a majority of the people would have been happy, because a majority of the people in this world have what they really need in life. Of course, if you have greed, then there is no end. Then you will say, I need more and more. Such people also don't have a problem, because their greed is so much that they are running after the things that they want in life. And when they run after it, they don't even have the time to be sorrowful. They have some deep rooted sorrow, but they just cover it. And in the name of collecting more things, more money, more property, and they just run helter skelter, and they don't even have time to breathe. So they don't even think of their sorrow. It is only when a person sits quietly and tries to find out a goal in life, then all these existential problem appear to the apparently come to the surface. Now I'm telling all this because this young man who went to Swami Shantananda had perhaps a kind of existential problem, and he thought if he goes to the east, because he knew that there are great spiritual people, spiritual persons in India who perhaps might solve his problem. So in the beginning, that is where most of the people in those days, I'm talking of about 60, 70 years ago, when spirituality was a new thing. Though Swami Vivekananda and other many people after them took Eastern philosophy to the West and gave it as a hope to the shattered minds of young people who did not have any meaning in life. They had no motive even to work. That's why they just went in search of some meaning in life. They saw the world wars, especially after the world wars. They said greed can cause this huge wars, and there's so much of suffering, person exploiting others, so much of exploitation by the haves and the have-nots, the privileged and the underprivileged, and so much suffering. Just as Swami Vivekananda once felt, ki if I were God, I would have created a better world. What is this world? He once complained to one of his friends. He said, I don't think God has created a perfect world. There's so much imperfection in this, because he said this when there was a time when he lost his father. The relatives were desperate to drive them out of the house. His mother, there was no income. His father had spent a lot of money, he had not saved anything, and he was looking for a job. At that stage of his life, he felt desperate, and he told his friend, Narendra Nath, as he was known, he said, I don't believe in your God and all. If I were to be God himself, I would have created a much better world. He is the way he has created, the way there is suffering. So this is a question. Of course, that was answered by Sri Ramakrishna later on. But that trouble, that kind of sorrow which he felt, made him think of the deeper questions of life. Why exactly am I living? What purpose is there in my life? And how can spirituality, or can the quest after God, solve it? That is the main thing. That's why he was going from person to person, asking him, have you seen God? Because he knew that everybody claims that you can get rid of sorrow if one can one can not only seek God, but attain to him. So if I don't see him, and if I just get an idea of God through books, then God is not for me. So he was very honest in his quest. He asked so many people and finally came to Sri Ramakrishna, from where he not only got the answer that he has seen God, but he said, I can show you. So what was this quest which Swami Vivekananda had, which made him restless for in his early youth? And of course, not that that restlessness went away, but that assurance from the master, from his guru, that though you see the world as evil, basically evil, when you suffer, that is what led Buddha to search for nirvana. He said, I am happy right now, but outside the palace, there is so much of sorrow. Suppose I become old, I become sick, or I become, I am about to die. Those fears are not going away from me. Right now, I am in a palace, I have everything that a young person should have. His father was very careful that he did not expose him to these things, to any kind of sorrow, thinking that the moment he sees sorrow, some astrologer had told him that he will try to become a monk, because he will try to find out a path for himself and he will not choose the path of luxury. So his father was very keen. He showed him the best things. But how long can you hide sorrow or suffering from a youth? So unfortunately, he married him off. He had a small child. And then suddenly he saw all these things. Had he seen it earlier, perhaps he would not have married at all. But anyway, after that also, with so much heaviness of heart, that small child, there's a beautiful description in Buddha's life, that day when he takes his decision, he said, no, I have to find a solution to this sorrow. I can't go on in this life without any meaning. His father tried for some time and succeeded also. He was happy, he was very powerful, he was trained nicely, he had all the wealth of the world, all the power of which his father could give him. Everything was safe and secure. But why did he choose to leave his small child and his wife in the palace and just walk away take a chariot, and he told his charioteer to drop him in the forest in search of something which would give purpose and meaning to his life. Now, of course, we are not going into that, but that is what motivates a large number of people, though that motivation sometimes is misplaced. And with that motivation, when they go, they grab at whatever they get, which they think will give a meaning in life. So in that age, when this young foreign youth came across some groups which told them that drugs are a way to just forget sorrow. There are so many methods and so many gross methods which mislead youths, and they find some kind of solace, or maybe you can say some kind of suffering they at least temporarily forget when they resort to drinks. And that is why these addiction, people get addicted to that just for the time being. How can I forget that sorrow? Even if it is a temporary solution, they find that it works. So that is how they go, and finally they find that they get caught in that very vicious circle, because it solves the problem, but it creates more problems later on. Then they have to seek better and better ways, and then they go deeper and deeper into those gross solutions, and they don't find it. So similarly, this boy happened to experiment with many so-called religious movements or so-called cults which were prevailing in the West, and somebody told him go to India. And unfortunately, or fortunately you can say, he came across somebody who directed him, you go to this organization, perhaps the Swamis there will solve your problem. So he comes to Shantananda. Now you see how mothers love. I'm telling you this example because when I heard that, I found how Shantananda reflected in his life that motherly love which he must have got from Holy Mother. When we read these conversations, you will get a hint of how keen she was to solve all the problems which a young person had. Of course, when that youth came to Swami Shantananda, he did not even ask him. It is rather strange that Shantananda's nature was such that he would not even ask the background of a person, because he felt that every person who comes to me has been sent by mother. That was his attitude, which was so, he had so much of, he had such a broad heart that he would not distinguish. Normally you will discriminate, just find out the background, what kind of youth he is. And somehow he was, of course, obviously they could not give him a place to stay in the order, because with all this background, having been exposed to different kinds of drugs and other things, that lost youth came for some help, and somehow he came to Swami Shantananda. And Shantananda, Shantananji, without even asking him about his background or anything, just looked upon him as a child of mother, and he spoke a few words. Of course, he could do very little. He could not even recommend that he should be allowed to stay, and it was not possible. Practically, it was not possible. But somehow, this youth felt that there is somebody, because perhaps he had taken to this kind of life where he experimented with so many gross measures to get rid of sorrow, and finding nothing satisfying him. In spite of trying all the different cults and other things, he decided to spend all his money, come to India, and somehow find somebody. He was desperately trying to clutch to certain people, and suddenly he comes across Shantananji, and though he spent only a few minutes with him, or maybe a few moments, he somehow felt, and he told this senior monk when he was about to leave the room, he said, see, I have met so many people, but somehow I feel that here is one person who doesn't hate me. He is the one person who I feel so comfortable with. So he, of course, obviously confessed everything, whatever he had done and what type of sorrow he is facing. But Maharaj simply ignored all those things and continued to shower the same love and sweet words. Normally, people would scold him, why did you do this, why did you do that? So he was used to that, and everywhere he was told what mistakes he had done. But here was a person, here was a saintly soul who just spoke sweet words and gave him a lot of hope. We don't know what happened to that young man, but after that, he, at least he told this very senior monk that I have been to so many places and I have so many contacts, in the sense I have biological relations. Many of the relations were broke, and I sought some kind of concern or love, but other than this place, I feel so comforted just by staying in the company of this saintly person. And then, of course, he had to leave, and then he leaves. We do not know. But my point here is that Shantananji, being a disciple of Holy Mother, imbibed that wonderful mother's love from his guru. So now he is asking, he had questions as normal youths have. So you see, in all these answers, we can see a glimpse of mother's love for him. He is asking a question. He is not even a disciple. He has just come as any other youth would come, and he asks a question which a normal spiritual aspirant or a religious aspirant in India would ask. The first thing he asks here today, we see, is it good for a monk? He has already become a monk, but his queries, his quest is still, he is not satisfied. He wants to know what is true spirituality. He wants to know what true peace is, how to get a true peace. So he thought, like all other people feel, that going to places of pilgrimage, just wandering about, that is what wandering monks do. Very often, they defeat the very purpose for which the monk has this parivrajaka. Unless it is done by a very mature person, it is not a safe option. So that caution Holy Mother is giving. Why do people go on pilgrimage? For advanced aspirants like Totapuri, who already had performed a lot of sadhana, traveling or going to places of pilgrimage is not harmful. In fact, for them it is very necessary. Every 3 days he used to change his place. But for that, some kind of prior preparation is necessary. In this case, Shantananji is a novice. He doesn't have experience of spirituality. So he asks Mother. There are cases where Holy Mother has encouraged some monks to go on Tirtha Yatra, as it is known, places of pilgrimage, saying that it is good for you, you go. There is a reason, but here she gives a different answer. He says, is it good for a monk to go to places of pilgrimage? Now, this is a general question, but the answer she gives is a particular answer. We cannot say that she would have given the same answer to every youth who had come to her. Mother says, if one's mind is at rest, it's very important how she answers. Though she was very simple, she was a great psychologist, more a great counselor, you can say, and she could give exact advice, which even the president of the order, Brahmananji, found it impossible to solve, she solved. Many times there were some problems when they found that even in spite of their meditation and their wonderful advice, the brahmacharis or the young monks would not be satisfied or would not be rid of that ailment or whatever worry they had. So they would say, now it is beyond my capacity to help you, now you go to Mother. And she would very often find out a simple solution. So here is asking, is it good for a monk? Means, in other words, he's saying, should I go on pilgrimage just to keep on wandering, seeing places? She says very carefully, she doesn't say don't go. But she also warns him. She says, if one's mind is at rest in a particular place, then what need is there to go to places of pilgrimage? So here there are two things one has to keep in mind. First of all, whether you go on pilgrimage or not, if it helps your mind to be in a state of rest, you go. But by going on pilgrimage, if your mind becomes more distracted, then you don't go. In other words, that is what she is trying to convey. If one's mind is at rest in a particular place, then what need is there to go to places of pilgrimage? Pilgrimage was designed by our ancestors in our scriptures. If it is a pilgrimage, it should not be just a tour, or it should not be a casual tour to visit site or a sightseeing tour of different places. That is a different issue altogether. I am talking of only certain places which are known as places of pilgrimage. In India, there are plenty, like Banaras, Vrindavan, and all those places where people go to get advantage of the vibrations. So she is saying, if you get rest in a particular place, say Udbodhan, he was perhaps speaking, asking this in Udbodhan, or maybe near Udbodhan, some center in Calcutta where mother used to. If you get rest, if the mind is at rest, not you get rest, if your mind feels calm, collected, without any distraction, if it is having some peace of mind, then if it is finding rest in a particular place, then there is no need for you to go to any place of pilgrimage. It is only designed mainly for householders who are so much preoccupied or so much exhausted by the heavy work. For them, perhaps now and then going to some quiet place, provided they go as pilgrims, not as tourists, and don't spend their time, as Swami Thakur used to say, when you go to a pilgrimage, if you keep on seeing things, then you don't get the benefit of the spiritual vibrations in that particular place. They have holy associations, great people have lived, and that is what makes a tirtha. When a large number of people come with one purpose for spiritual development, then only it becomes a place of pilgrimage. And if such people do not continue to go, only tourists continue to go, then that place loses its spiritual value. So one has to be very careful. And she is telling Swami Shantananda, then he understands. Now, because he was very busy, he says, Mother, leave alone having a mind which is at rest. I am so busy that I don't even have time for meditation. Now, this is a very common problem, even with monks, because in the initial stages, monks have to do a lot of work. People have questioned this. Everybody questioned Swami Vivekananda. When Banaras center was started, even the great Master Mahasaya, because he took the advice of Sri Ramakrishna, which was given to him. And Swamiji told everybody, the people who were youths and who were working in Banaras, to serve God in man. So that left them no time. They were early morning there to get up, serve these patients and cook for them and feed them as if they were living Narayanas. And by the time they retired, they would be so tired that there would be no time for meditation. So perhaps Shantananji is referring to that. He was perhaps in one of the busy centers. So he says, and then somebody asked Holy Mother, M came and told these young monks, oh, I see you people are working the whole day and not getting even time. That's not why you left your houses and came here. You just have to control and spend some time in meditation. Just don't be over engaged. Of course, there was no choice. These brahmacharis had to work. Otherwise, the hospital would not It was not possible to run a hospital. There were patients coming every time, poor patients. They had to collect money for running that organization, that hospital. So, but Master Mashe came and told them. So a lot of young monks got confused. Oh, have we come to the wrong place? Have we come to the wrong place? We have come here, and as M is telling us, Thakur told you to meditate, and we don't get time to meditation. So they went and consulted Holy Mother and said, Holy Mother, we come here, we have become monks to lead a meditative life, and there's so much of work to do. And even M told us that you have to lessen the work. Then Swami Holy Mother said, no, whatever Naren has started, that is whatever Swami Vivekananda has started, it is correct. It is according to Master's wish. Tell him you don't have to worry about it. Everything will be taken care of. You just go on doing. Those who don't want to work, let them leave the monastic order. So she was so firm and she had so much faith that the method Swami Vivekananda suggested for young people, how to convert the tamas that is into rajas and how to convert that rajas into sattva. See, very often sattva comes in disguised as tamas, and Holy Mother knew that. Of course, Holy Mother was the Divine Mother herself. So not because Swamiji said that, but Swamiji's plan was that when people come here and if they confuse sattva with tamas with sattva, which have similar characteristics but are definitely not the same, in the name of meditation they will be idle, and that idleness will not give them sattva, but they will get more and more immersed in tamas. So she said, whatever Naren has prescribed for these young men, let them be very active, let them work their way so that they develop that rajas, they get rid of whatever little tamas is there. Once they are full of rajas, then they will hanker for sattva, they will hanker for meditation, that, and then they will be ready. So the disciple is asking the question, two questions in fact. First he says, Mother, how can I do that? How can I find the mind at rest? I do not even have time for meditation. And secondly, if that is not happening, then how will my Kundalini awaken? Said, kindly make my Kundalini. He had heard what Kundalini is, but perhaps he was thinking that by Mother's grace it will awaken by itself. So kindly make my Kundalini awaken. Then Mother gives him the assurance. It will certainly awaken. A little japa and meditation will awaken it. Will it ever wake up on its own? It will not happen. You just can't sit and think that Kundalini will awaken. Do intense japa and meditation. The practice of meditation will lead your mind to such one-pointedness that you won't like to give up meditation. But when you do not achieve such concentration of mind, this is very important, a very practical tip she is giving. Don't force yourself to meditation. You have to practice, but only till you achieve that state. Don't overexert yourself. Don't force. Do it till you feel happy. Say you start with 1000 or 500 or whatever japa you do. You get joy. Then next day maybe you can increase a little bit. You still have joy. But if you make it 10,000 on one day, suddenly you feel like doing it, then not only will one feels a disgust for continuing, but one feels that it is totally exhausting you. So that's why she says, don't force yourself to meditation. On such occasions, if you are too exhausted, finish your spiritual practice by simply saluting the Lord. Just salute, surrender everything to him and say that I can't do it now, I don't have the mood. And then she gives another practical tip. The day on which you have the right mood, you will have meditation spontaneously. You don't have to exert much. There will be ups and downs. life will wax and wane, the moods will wax and wane. Be patient, wait for the mood, wait for the tide to uh, be high, and then you can set out to sail. So the day on which you have the right mood, just you will have meditation spontaneously. Now, Swami Shantananji is asking a further question. He says, Mother, why is it that my mind does not become steady? When I try to think of God, I find it drawn to various worldly objects. Then Mother says, it is harmful if the mind is drawn to worldly objects like money and members of one's family. Nonetheless, the mind naturally dwells on one's daily activities. So she is making a clear distinction between distraction due to attachment and distraction due to one's daily activities, which are obligatory. There is one karma known as Nitya karma and one is Naimittaka karma. There are two types of karma. Some karmas are mandatory. Like if you are in a profession, if you are a doctor, you have to work as a doctor. There's no other option. It's not an optional thing. It is a compulsory thing because that is the profession with which you earn your money. But other than that, all other activities, one has to be careful. So he says, you have your daily activities like puja and many other things, even working in the hospital. So she knew the monastics have a lot of activities to do. So if they dwell, he says it is natural that the mind will dwell on the objects of your professional life. Professional in the sense, the day-to-day activities. When you deal with patients, you have to deal with medicines, you have to deal with people. You can't say that mind should not dwell on that. But that will not harm you. But if it is harmful, especially she's talking about the monastics here, if the mind is drawn to worldly objects like money and members of one's family. So for a monastic, that he has to take care. It doesn't matter if he takes care in the activities of the center, whatever it may be medical activity, it may be some preaching activity. But then she adds, if you don't succeed in meditation, then practice japa. Now this is the famous quote of Holy Mother where she says japat siddhi. Now it is very often quoted, but this was the advice given to Swami Shantananji for the first time. He says, if you cannot succeed, if you don't succeed in meditation, practice japa. Japa leads to perfection. Japat siddhi, that is the Bengali sentence she said. And that has become, people just quote this. But why was it told and to whom was it told? This particular advice was given to Swami Shantananji, who was saying that mind is preoccupied with lot of duties. It may be applicable to anybody. It's not that it is meant for monastics alone. Anybody who has certain mandatory duties and by virtue of which he has to be occupied day and night in that. Say a surgeon has to do operations. He can't say that his mind is getting distracted because he has to focus on the patient. That is in no way it will harm his spiritual practices. But for that reason, if one is not able to succeed or able to do meditation, then she says, you don't have to worry. Just do japa. Through japa, you will get perfection. If a meditative mood sets in while you are doing japa, well and good. But if not, don't force your mind to meditate. So she is making a subtle difference between japa and meditation. What is this essential difference? Difference is japa, meditation is something where you have to, that subject-object relationship goes. When you say dhyana, if you see Patanjali's definition of dhyana, as you go on focusing the mind more and more and more because of japa or because of any other activity. See, meditative state can be forced not forced, can be induced even by seeing a beautiful scenery. There are cases where people, when they sat on the horizon, seeing the sky, the sea meet the beautiful sky, and the sun is setting, suddenly they go. If you see Madhvacharya's life, when he first went to Badri, in Badrinaran, those, I don't know how many of you have visited that place. There is a beautiful place which is known as Nara Narayana. There are two huge mountains. They say they are named as Nara and Narayana. Nara Pahad and Narayana mountain. So there is a valley which goes in between, and the path that leads to Swarga Rohini. Swarga Arohini means that is the way to heaven. Literally, it is a wonderful path. Of course, it is so difficult to go till the end of that path. It is said that the Pancha Pandavas with Dharmaraja and one dog, they, after they retired, after they won the war and then ruled for, when they were in the as Vanaprasthas, there is a story in the Mahabharata which says that they decided, now it is time for us to hand over the kingdom to somebody else and go and perform spiritual disciplines. So they go on this Swarga Rohini path, and one by one the disciples die, because it's a very, very, now of course there are many facilities, but in those days, even today, it is so difficult to go on that path. So it is known as Swarga Rohini, so that you go with very high thoughts. Of course, this is done only when you are in the Vanaprastha, or when you have attained to state of sannyasa, that you don't have any need, any further desire. So that person who walks on that in those days, now of course there are so many facilities. If something happens, you are rescued by the medical team. It's a very treacherous path, though it is one of the most beautiful paths. So when you walk, sometimes you automatically go into a meditative state. The mood sets in. So Holy Mother says, if the meditative mood sets in, then well and good, but don't force. So you won't get such beautiful scenery or such wonderful uh, paths or such wonderful uh, marvels of Prakriti. That is why we find most of the rishis in these wonderful places. There is that Vasudhara. I mean, there is a waterfall there. On the way, you'll see so many things where you'll find such beautiful sights that they immediately induce some kind of meditative state. So she is telling, Holy Mother is telling him, if by some chance, whether it is your room or such beautiful places in the Himalayas, if you try to, if you attain to such meditative state spontaneously, then you meditate, otherwise you continue with japa. So this is a very practical advice. Under no circumstances, she says, you should force your mind to meditate. Then there will be reaction. Now, the disciple asks another question. Where will I get this kind of atmosphere? So, for practicing spiritual disciplines like japa and meditation, in Varanasi, should one live in a monastery or in some lonely place? Now, as you know, Varanasi monastery was full of activities at that time. It was connected with the hospital. So most of the monks were very busy. And even if you lived there on a vacation, you will still be hearing the rush of people, patients coming, and so many people running around. So he was asking whether it is practical for me to go to Varanasi and live in the monastery or go to some lonely place. So Mother gives a wonderful advice specifically for him. See, again, you have to remember, this advice she is not giving to everybody, only this particular case, depending on what his mental situation is. She says so wisely, if you practice spiritual disciplines for some time in a solitary place, as Thakur used to say, Nirjan Vas is so important. He says, if you practice spiritual disciplines for some time, not eternally, in a solitary place like Rishikesh, you will find in those days Rishikesh was very, very quiet. Now, of course, it's a big town. But now further, you may have to go further up to get this kind of solitary place. You will find that your mind has gained in strength. And then after doing that stint in the Himalayas or maybe in Rishikesh, then you can live in any place. You can come back to Banaras or anywhere or in the company of anyone without being in the least affected by it. And then she gives the example which Sri Ramakrishna used to give. A sapling must be protected by a fence all around. But when it grows big, not even cows and goats can injure it. Spiritual practice in a solitary place is absolutely essential. As Thakur used to insist, solitary place is absolutely essential, where you have to go away physically also, not only mentally, but physically also. When worldly thoughts crop in your mind and they possess it, then you should go away from the company of others and pray to Him. Him means Lord, with tears in your eyes. Then you will see that He will remove all the dross of your mind and will also give you understanding. Now, this is what Mother tells, but he is not convinced. So he is saying that you tell me to leave everything and go, stay in Rishikesh, but I don't have the strength to do it. So he says, I don't have enough strength for doing spiritual disciplines. I don't know anything. I have surrendered myself to your holy feet. So he's telling his guru, I don't know. You are asking me to do this, but I can't do it. I have surrendered myself to your holy feet. Please do as you will. And with folded palms, the mother began praying to the master. Now, she knows that the disciple is helpless. He is not convinced that he can do these spiritual practices alone. And he is surrendering to his guru. So what will she do? See what she does. She immediately folds her palms, and the mother, it literally happened. It has been recorded as it happened. So with folded palms, the mother began praying to the master. Now that is what a guru does when he can't help the disciple beyond. This is just a demonstration, not that mother could not help. She was as powerful as Sri Ramakrishna, or in fact more powerful than Sri Ramakrishna. She could easily say that I am doing it, but she has to set an example to other people how one should depend on God. So she starts praying and praying to the master and says, may the master protect you in your vows of sannyasa. He is looking after you. What should you be afraid of? If the mind is kept engaged in some work, it does not indulge in silly thoughts. But if you sit idle, the mind is likely to indulge in various kinds of thoughts. So here she is giving two different advices. First, she says, now and then you have to go to a solitary place like Rishikesh. But Swami Shantaranji at that time was perhaps not ready. And he says, no, I don't know anything. I don't have that kind of strength where I can stay alone and do spiritual practices, disciplines. So I do whatever you like. I am just surrendering. So he is really helpless, and is genuine when he says this. So as a true guru would do, he says, don't worry. I am praying because you have surrendered to me. I am surrendering you, or I am handing over your responsibility to the master, because that is how the guru is supposed to do. And he will look after you. And because he is looking after you, you don't have to be afraid. But at the same time, she says, try to be engaged in some work. It will at least prevent you from thinking silly thoughts. The mind is capable of thinking silly thoughts, some worries, some anxieties we invite. But if you sit idle, the thing is, there is the effect of tamas, that if you sit idle, it will definitely go to different thoughts which are negative. So a little bit of rajas, I mean, in the initial stages is necessary. That's why Holy Mother told, if they don't want to stay, let them go. Let the brahmacharis go. But as Narayan has decided, the rules which he has made, they have to be observed. Those who live here, they have to work. And they have to work because that is why he is trying to safeguard their interest, trying to convert the tamas that they have, convert it into rajas, and then from rajas to sattva, and then sattva, with that sattvic mind they can perform spiritual practices. So then Shantananji is now asking a particular question. Now here again you have to remember, what is true for him at that time may not be true for all. So that is the danger of studying the reminiscences. When we study reminiscences, we try to think that everything is applicable to us. One has to be very cautious. If we have the mind which Shantananji had, then this advice is for us. If for some reason we don't share the same mind, similar mind at least, not the same mind, similar mind, then certain advices, certain instructions she gave to Swami Shantananji may not be applicable. So one has to be a bit cautious. So he says, how and where should I practice spiritual disciplines? Now he has understood that mother is praying for me, but that doesn't mean that I can just relax. I have to perform. So if I have to perform spiritual practices, where should I go? Which is the best place? I don't know. You tell me. Then mother says, Varanasi is the place for you. Spiritual discipline means, now she says, though Varanasi is the place for you, she is giving the fundamentals of meditation. This is very important. It's not that Varanasi is the place for you, so Varanasi is the place for all of us. No, it may not be. For some other people, she would have said Vrindavan is your place, or she would have said just be in the place where you are. That is the best place for you. So it depends on whom she is talking to. So she says spiritual discipline means holding the mind steadfast at his, that is Sri Ramakrishna's holy feet, all the time, and immersing the mind in thoughts of him. That constitutes true spirituality, whether you do it in Varanasi or anywhere else. If the environment is suitable for keeping your mind, holding your mind steadfast and focusing on all the time means in an unconscious undercurrent, immersing the mind in thoughts of him. Not that you will be able or anybody will be able to think only of the Lord, but if one feels intuitively that he is the one who is controlling my destiny, making me do all sorts of things. So it is his grace with which I will accomplish whatever I want to accomplish in life. Then he says, repeat his name. Immerse, for that Japat Siddhi, repeat his name. Then disciple is still not convinced. I mean, Shantananji is not yet convinced. So he says, as most of us say, what can the repetition of his name achieve if it is not attended with earnestness? He said, I am doing, but somehow I feel that earnestness, that vyakulta, or that inclination to be deeply immersed, and every mantra is repeated with so much earnestness, that earnestness is missing. So how it will help me? Can I just repeat mechanically, then will I get any benefit? Now this answer is very significant. Mother says, and this is a wonderful example, even Thakur used to give this. Regardless of whether you get into water willingly or you are pushed, your clothes will be soaked. Now what does this signify? Okay, you do japa, perhaps somebody is doing it willingly. That means somebody is willingly going into the water. So his clothes will be soaked. But suppose somebody is just pushing you. By accident, you have come to spiritual life. And still you are doing it. You don't even know the meaning of why you are doing it. Perhaps the purpose is not clear as the person who is doing it willingly. But still, Holy Mother says the effect will be that clothes of both of you will be soaked. That means willingly or unwillingly, just go on doing it. Don't question. Practice meditation regularly, for your mind is still unripe. After prolonged practice of meditation, your mind will become absolutely steady. And you should constantly discriminate between real and unreal. That is, what is temporary, what is permanent. Know for certain that the worldly objects to which the mind is drawn to be temporary or unreal, and surrender your mind to God. Then she gives another example which Sri Ramakrishna gave about a person who was fishing. So a man was angling in a pond all by himself when a bridegroom's procession with its music passed by, but his eyes remained fixed on the float. So she says you should be like that. There will be distraction all around you, just as a very big bridegrooms, when they go, they make so much of noise in India. So every street, whenever they go, everybody is distracted. But here, this man who was focusing on the line which he was using, fishing line, which he was using to catch the fish, the bait was about to be swallowed. So he was so keen to know when I should pull it, that he was just focusing, and he did not even notice. Even if he had noticed, he didn't focus on it. So the procession with all the music passed by, and his eyes were not, he might have heard those things, but his eyes were focused on whatever he was doing. So that is how Holy Mother says one has to do japa. Whenever one is doing japa, no matter how many distractions are there, at that moment, your mind should be fixed on the float. That is, fixed on the goal of meditation or the goal of japa. Do it for a little while, doesn't matter, but do it with perfection. Then the disciple now asks the fundamental question which everybody asks. Now, after knowing all these techniques and what it is to be done, suddenly Shantananji thinks about the aim in life, which is a natural question, whether you are in spiritual life or whether you are in any other kind of preparatory religious life. When otherwise you will never ask this question. A normal person who is so busy that he doesn't even have time to ask questions, or he doesn't have the patience to ask this question. Here disciple is asking, what is the aim of life? And see such a wonderful answer she gives, and we'll close with this and see if there are some questions. You please type it in the chat so that we don't waste much time. If there are some questions based on what we discussed, please go on typing in the chat box. Now, see Holy Mother's answer. So nice, so precise, and so practical. She says the aim of life, as Sri Ramakrishna said, is to realize God. Now, what does realize God mean? We'll answer that one after another. The aim of life is to realize God and remain immersed in the contemplation of His holy feet always. You monks belong to the Master. He is watching over your earthly life as well as your life to come. That is the hereafter, after you finish your earthly life. What worry do you have? Can anyone think of God all the time? Spend some time relaxing and some time absorbed in thoughts of Him. So she is giving a very practical solution, that aim of life is to realize God, because that is the only reason why you have renounced everything and come here. And remain immersed in the thought that I have surrendered my everything to Sri Ramakrishna, and let him do what he wills. But she comforts, saying that you don't have to worry. You just have this goal in life. What is the aim in life? Should be the aim in life. And if you do it, everything else will follow. And he says, he is watching your earthly life. That means, and as well as your life to come. So as Sri Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Yoga Kshema Vahamyam Ananyas Chintayanto Ma Ye Jana Paryupasate Tesham Nityabhiyuktanam Yogakshemam Vahamyam. So Arjuna is promised by Krishna that Ananyas Chintayantoma, that is contemplation on the feet, holy feet, or the concentration on the Ishta or one's own God whom we worship, because it is through Ishta that we reach God. Whether you consider Ishta as God or not is a symbol and a window through which you touch the ultimate or touch God or touch truth, by whatever name you call. Now he says to remain immersed, that is the highest ideal, but since it is not possible to always remember that, try to remember it again and again. This is the purpose for which I was born. So she is giving a very good hint, says, but be assured that because you are monks, because you have left everything for his sake, he will look after your earthly life as well as your life to come. So, whatever it may be, there's no guarantee that all will get nirvana or all will get mukti. So she says it will be a continuation of the master's duty to look after you not only on this earth as long as you live in the physical body, but even after that, whatever be your fate, whatever be the life to come, it may be a life in the subtle plane, it may be a life of rebirth, whatever it is, once you dedicate and focus on the master, that reciprocal care, and you can say as just Thakur used to say, if you go one step towards the Lord comes 10 steps. So that's literally true. When mother says you don't have to worry, you just take the one step you need to take and God will arrange everything. But she says that I know that is not possible. So what will you do? You can't think of God all the time. It is physically or even mentally impossible. So he says, spend some time relaxing. You need some kind of rest, some kind of relaxation. And rest of the time or some time you spend also absorbed in thoughts of your Ishta. So that is what Holy Mother is advising. Then the next question is also very interesting. He says, then she tells something else. I'll just read it. And because this is part of that answer, he has asked this question, aim of life. Then she gives one practical tip. I'll read it and we'll discuss it next time, because that involves a lot of Patanjali sutras and the ideas of painful obstructions known as kleshas. Kleshas means they are painful obstructions which cause sorrow. So mother continues, she doesn't say that you spend whatever time you can thinking about the God, other time you spend in relaxing. That is fine. But he says a monk must be free from anger and hatred. He must tolerate everything. The master used to tell Hriday, Sri Ramakrishna used to tell Hriday very often, you will bear with my words and I shall bear with yours. Then only can we satisfactorily pull on. Otherwise, the cashier of the temple estate may have to be called for settling our disputes. So normally when any quarrel happened or took place, some authority like the cashier, who was the khajanchi as they call, he used to come and settle the disputes. Normally the disputes would be for money, for some settlement here and there. So naturally, so Sri Ramakrishna is telling Hriday, ki you may find certain things not very likable with me, and I may feel some things irritating me. But he says, you have to bear. Whatever words I utter, you should bear, and I shall bear yours. It's not one way. Not that I go on scolding and you go on listening. No, now and then you also abuse me, because Hriday had this dominating nature. He used to tell, out of love, of course, he served Sri Ramakrishna so much, but he was very harsh because of the strange, when you serve certain people, you tend to become a little, you enjoy. I have seen this. And with the Swami Bhuteshanji, some of his sevaks, when he used to serve, he used to, like a child, even enjoy their scolding. So some of the outsiders, they felt very, very, very troubled. Maharaj, they are your sevaks, and how can they talk to you like this? Can you not scold them? Then he jokingly, he not jokingly, he said, even Sri Ramakrishna had to face. What are you talking about me? He was abused by Hriday day and night, but he had to bear with him. And he himself said, you bear with my words, I will bear with yours. Then only we can go along. You need me, I need you, it is fine. So that is how he said, see, I am old. I have to depend totally on these people. So if I get angry on them, then I can't work. If they also get angry with me for everything I do, then if they can't tolerate that, then some of my shortcomings, then they will have to leave, they will suffer. So we have to adjust. That is what Holy Mother says, because this she is mentioning to Shantananji, not because he was a monastic. This is a wonderful psychological thing which is useful for everyone in every situation of life. Very famously in Bengali, Thakur had told her, Jekhane Jemon, Shekhane Temon. Means whichever situation you are in, you have to act according to the situation. Modify your actions. If necessary, modify it. Don't be stubborn or insist that I'll behave only in this way. No, Jekhane Jemon, Shekhane Temon. That is the secret which Master explained to Holy Mother and said, see, he taught many things to Holy Mother. When she was in Dakshineshwar, when she came as a young person, 16-year-old woman, she had to be taught many things: how not to waste water, how to wash dishes, how to arrange the room, and how to behave with others. So during that training, he said, Jekhane Jamon, Shekhane Temon, means when you are in a particular situation, you should know how to act, how to talk, how to behave with certain categories of people. You can't say that I will be what I am and I'll go on bulldozing everything like a bull in a china shop. You can't do that, because that will cause problems. But jake jemon take temon means depending on the person, not just the situation. Depending on the person with whom you have to interact, you have to modify your actions also. Of course, without sacrificing the principles. So that is, and it also depends on the time, the situation, when it occurs, according to a certain situation or in time, not in just place. In time also, sometimes during certain periods or certain phases, you have to ignore certain things. You have to perhaps have a very lenient attitude. Other times you may have to be strict. So it all depends on what the situation is, when it occurs, and with whom it is occurring. So all the three aspects, Sri Ramakrishna used to say, and Holy Mother now is repeating, that we should be free from anger and hatred, which raga and dvesha especially, which Patanjali says is a pain. It is a painful obstruction which leads to sorrow. Kleshas, they are themselves not sorrow. When you are angry, you don't feel sorrow. After getting angry or after hating a person, then you have remorse, and that suffering, that is when you suffer. When you are angry, you just don't realize what is going on and you just get angry and feel that nothing has happened. But once that anger phase is over, that klesha gives rise to sorrow. That is why they are known as kleshas. So we have to remove, as we discussed in the five kleshas which cause all our troubles. They have to be handled before they occur. It's not after the kleshas express themselves as udara avastha. If we feel freely express those things, then later on there will be sorrow. So that is what Holy Mother says here. So let me just see, there are three questions. I'll quickly try to answer. Yeah. what is the difference? Oh, there's only one. The others are just saying thank you and pranam and yes. Yes, Ajay, you can ask. You have written that I have a question. Do you want to speak? Should I unmute you or can you type? In the meantime, I'll answer another question. So this question says, Maharaj, what is the difference between a true devotee householder and a monk? So true devotee householder, how it depends on how you define. A true devotee householder is just a designation given to one who is living in the household. But when you say true householder, it means, according to Swamiji, to be a true householder is as difficult as to become a true monk. He was giving the example of Nag Mashe. Nag Mashe, for all practical purposes, was a married man living with his wife. But even Swami Vivekananda used to respect him because he was so full of vairagya and so much meditative in nature that he did not show any signs of a householder. In no way. That is why he lived in a portion, in a part of East Bengal, which is now Bangladesh, and he was so truthful. I mean, all the qualities which you would expect of a saint. Though he was householder, he refused to do practice medicine because Sri Ramakrishna casually told him, his guru casually told him that you are earning money. I mean, those people who earn money by exploiting the suffering of others, that is what doctors do. I'm sorry but this is what Sri Ramakrishna said. He even spoke these things to lawyers. So once this Nagmashe heard Sri Ramakrishna just telling, because you see, most of the doctors, it is of course a profession. Now you can't say doctors can't treat. But in those days, doctors were, people we used to be so dependent on doctors that practically they went to doctors only when they were facing a grave danger of losing their life. And most of the doctors, especially the selfish ones, would exploit that situation and without looking into the capacity of the patient to pay. So Sri Ramakrishna had observed that people, for want of good medical treatment was very expensive and very rare to get good doctors, especially in British India. So Holy Mother once told Dr. Kanjilal, when Dr. Kanjilal was a great devotee, and his wife once came and said, Mother, please pray to Thakur for me so that my husband becomes prosperous. He's not doing well because he's not, as a doctor, though he's very good, people, if you are not commercial, if you have that service spirit, you can't earn more money. So this lady goes and tells Holy Mother, Mother, can you pray to Thakur so that my husband becomes a little more prosperous? She says, how can I say that, my daughter? She said, why can't you? Then she says, see, if I pray that your husband becomes prosperous, then it will be defeating the very purpose. Then more people have to fall sick, they have to suffer, they have to pay more money. So do I wish that my children suffer and go to a doctor? Rather, let them not go to a doctor. So that I can't pray like that. Maybe you go to others, they may pray, but I can't pray. I can't pray through his own efforts, let him earn money, I don't mind. But I can't pray to Thakur to make him prosperous. That means I am praying to Thakur that make more people sick so that they will earn more money. So you see how alert Holy Mother's mind was. So she is telling the same thing here. And so that is why you have to remember that, as Swami Vivekananda said, the difference between a good householder, devotee householder, or a good monk is not much if they have vairagya and they have the tendency to practice abhyasa. Abhyasa and vairagya determines how much of abhyasa I can do and how much of vairagya I can, to what extent I can go. If these two qualities are there, then it doesn't matter what you do, which profession you are in, but these are the two yardsticks to decide. Otherwise there is not much difference. One difference is definitely there. If we believe what Holy Mother says, she very clearly said. Now, this is from Holy Mother's point of view. According to Swamiji and Thakur, there is no essential difference. But Holy Mother made some significant remark. When one girl's mother, who was growing old and she had some desire to serve humanity, or maybe she was inspired by Nivedita and wanted to continue doing some good work, because she did not want to be bound by marriage. So that mother of that girl who was grown enough to take her own decisions, she goes and approaches the mother. Mother, please tell your disciple or maybe this daughter to marry. Otherwise, we are so worried for her. Then she said, how can I say that? It is her life, and not only that, she made some very significant remark. See, you don't see my child. Of course, she used to refer to the girl's mother also as a child and the girl also as the child. So says, can you not see so much of suffering that you are undergoing? How can I put my child and allow her to suffer? She is half free if she doesn't marry. That means if she chooses to remain independent, why are you, it is so rare that people get this desire, so why are you spoiling your head for that? Why are you worrying and why are you anxious on that account? Is she not half free? Why do you want to push her into some kind of bondage and to be subservient to somebody? And if it turns out that she has to be enslaved to somebody throughout her life, then what worse can it be? So let her decide. If she willingly wants, let her marry. I can't tell her to do that. She has her own life. She has her own decision to make. Let her decide how much free she wants to be. So that way she made a distinction that if you are half free, if you choose not to become a true devotee householder. I don't know what you mean by devotee householder, but if devotee householder means having a family or having children, then this true devotee householder, we cannot define that way. But this is what Holy Mother said. So according to that, she was making a distinction, obviously, and asking the girl to make the right choice, or at least telling her mother that if she wants to make a choice, let her make a choice. You don't interfere. And because she explained, this is that girl will be half free if she doesn't marry, but still if she wants to marry, she never said don't do it, because then if she willingly wants to be in some kind of bondage, if that is okay with her, then let her go ahead and do what she likes, but I can't tell her. So that was the answer. So that is the difference which Holy Mother pointed out between a monastic and a true, or in your words, if it is a devotee householder, if that is what you meant. So one more question is there. I think we have little time. Ajay is asking to unmute him. Okay, I'll do it. Just give me 1 second. You want to ask? Acha, okay. Unmute. Yes. Yes, I have allowed you to unmute yourself.
Okay. Pranam Maharaj.
Yes,
Very
please.
nice discussion. I have a simple question, Maharaj.
Okay.
You spoke about the japa and meditation.
Yes.
And you said there's a difference between the japa and meditation.
Yeah.
What is the difference, Maharaj?
Huge difference. See, meditation, as I told you, is dhyana. The word Patanjali uses, if you have attended my Raj Yoga classes, in the first sadhana, in the Samadhi Pada, the first chapter is Samadhi Pada, where the goal is described. Now we are discussing Sadhana Pada. We actually, in our class, when we studied Raj Yoga, our Swamiji, who taught us in training center, said first you have to do the second chapter. because first sadhana, but somehow for some strange reason, Patanjali discusses the goal first and then the means to the goal. So kleshas and all the simple things which come before even we can start meditation are discussed later. But anyway, when we come to that chapter, we will discuss in detail. But I'll give you a simple summary of what we discussed in the first chapter, which we have discussed now. All the sutras are over. There, dhyana is known as, or meditation, which is dhyana, is the seventh state just before samadhi. And japa comes much lower, in the sense, not lower in effect, but lower in the process by which it is done. It comes under abhyasa and vairagya. So he is asking how vrittis can be controlled, how our mental waves can be controlled. He says through abhyasa and vairagya. Just abhyasa will not do, because abhyasa means repetition of the japa. So when you constantly repeat the japa, one part of the process is going on, that is fine. But at the same time, the vairagya part of it, why vairagya is necessary? Because it is like taking a broom and you are cleaning and somebody else is shoving some dirt on your path. No matter how many leaves you clean, the wind is blowing and again. So vairagya means don't allow further leaves to gather, and abhyasa means clean the leaves which you are doing. So japa does one thing, it helps you to clean the samskaras. That is one thing it does. Its action is preliminary. Now what is dhyana? It comes at a stage when you have established yourself in vairagya. So one has attained to a vairagya where other pain-bearing obstructions or kleshas, or maybe you can say the other distractions, fresh distractions don't come. When that happens, this vairagya helps your abhyasa, helps your japa to be converted into meditation. Now, what happens when you are in the state of meditation? The state of japa enables you to be one-pointed. It is known by the name dharana. There is a name, that is a step just after yama, niyama, pranayama and many things. There is a stage known as dharana. That dharana enables you to focus your mind. So japa enables you to do dharana. It just helps you, or it helps you in a very powerful way to concentrate on a particular ishta or your, but at the same time, there is this small ego which says that I have to do japa, I have to do again and again, that willpower is involved. So when you continuously do it, when japa becomes very intense, when you say, when there is no gap between two japa, like mother used to do 1 lakh japa, she used to do every day, then it spontaneously gets converted into dhyana. Why it happens is that between the one japa and the next japa, there is no gap. There's no space or nothing can come and distract you. So one after another, the intensity just increases. Then we go to dharana to dhyana. So pratyahara means not allowing the dirt or the leaves to come again and distract the mind, which is already concentrated. Pratyahara does that. But dharana helps you to focus the mind. After focusing the mind, that is the 6th step. 7th step is dhyana, where all the leaves have been destroyed by your japa and not a single leaf is there of distraction. So there's no dirt and the mind spontaneously rests on the object of meditation and even forgets itself. Then only Thakur exists or the Ishta exists. Whoever you are meditating on, that alone exists. You, for a moment, you feel that you don't feel the need to use your willpower to repeat the mantra. The mantra, as it were, gets sucked. It is the word used is it gets sucked. Patanjali, we'll come to that sutra. He says the whole mantra is sucked into dhyana, into the Ishta. Then you find it is the Ishta alone which is true. You are not there, and that gives you tremendous joy, because all our sorrows are because of this useless or very bad klesha, which is known as asmita. So our asmita means ego. Our ego, which identifies ourselves with all the stupidities, gross stupidities, like I am weak, that is not allowing us to think of our real self, which is our Ishta. Ishta is just an object. When you meditate, when Sri Ram Krishna or any other Ishta on whom you meditate, when your whole attention he sucks, when you surrender everything to him, when you say Namaha means not me, you are denying your ego again and again and again and again. When the ego is denied hundreds and thousands by constant japa, it leads to dhyana. So basic difference is japa leads to dhyana, and at one stage it becomes dhyana. So that is the only difference. Okay?
Thank you, Maharaj.
Yeah.
Very nice explanation.
Okay. Thank you. So I'll
Thank you.
take your leave.
Yeah.
Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.